Ever since the MPC Key 61 came out, and along with it an entire suite of standalone instrument plugins for the MPC, the burning question on lots of people's minds has been, can the new generation MPCs really compete with fully realized and much more expensive flagship hardware workstations such as the Roland Fantom or the Yamaha Montage? Today, I hope to finally answer that question by putting my MPC X SE up against my Roland Fantom 6 and comparing them in the two aspects that matter to me the most: workflow and sound. At the end of the video, I'll also tell you who I think is probably the ideal user for each one of these devices. If you're already a subscriber, huge welcome back. If this is your first time here, hi, welcome to the Midlife Synthesis. Let's get started. So before I start, I just need to clarify a couple of things. First off, I bought and paid for both of these devices with my own money, and no one is paying me for this video. Second, the reason why I'm comparing the Fantom to the MPC X SE and not any other version of the MPC such as the Live or the Keys or the One is that to me the X and the X SE is really the ultimate iteration of the MPC platform in terms of hardware control surface and user experience. And also, if you were to buy an MPC X SE plus the Jura and the Mini D plugins and the 61 key MIDI keyboard, all of these items combined should land you close to the neighborhood of the price of a new Fantom. So the comparison makes more sense in terms of cost as well. Workflow. As I've said multiple times on this channel, the sound is what gets you into a synth. The workflow is what makes you stay. Both of these machines have fast and intuitive workflows that rely on a clever combination of hardware controls coupled with touchscreen capabilities. In a nutshell, both of these machines operate by creating MIDI loops or clips and then chaining these clips together into a full song. The devil is in the details of how you create and edit these clips. So here's a fire round of the best and worst parts of each. The touchscreen. Love them or hate them, touchscreens are here to stay. And both of these machines require you to use them in tandem with some hardware controls. Someone in the comments asked me which one of these is less reliant on the touchscreen, and I'd have to say that they're both equally dependent of them. But honestly, on both of them, you never feel that the touchscreen is distracting or that it takes away from the experience. And I say this as someone who does not enjoy iPad or iPhone music production at all. I think that the magic here is that the touchscreen is mainly used to select a parameter and then you proceed to manipulate it with a physical knob in most cases. The Fantom does this by placing parameters above the 6 endless encoders under the screen and lighting these knobs up with different colors that match the corresponding parameters. It's a clever way of always having your physical controls linked up to your screen. The X does have the upper hand here though, thanks to its 16 Q links with corresponding LED strips, which allow you to quickly reach for the parameter you're looking for without touching the screen. However, there are three reasons why I actually love the screen of the X. First off, it's huge, bigger than any of the other MPCs, and of course bigger than the Fantoms, which makes actually touching what you want to touch way easier if you have chubbier fingers like mine. Second, you can adjust the tilt, which might seem like an afterthought, but it's truly one of my favorite things about the X. Maybe it's because I'm a bit older now and I still remember my neck discomfort from hovering over the MPC Live. In any case, the Fantom screen is slightly tilted, so it's not as straining as the MPC Live or One, but still nowhere near as comfortable as the screen on the X. Finally, the biggest difference between these two is that you can use the pincer gesture on your MPC like you would on a smartphone to zoom in and out, something you can't do on the Fantom. It might not be a deal breaker to some, but for me, that small difference makes a huge impact on my fluidity and speed when editing a piano roll, especially since it's a gesture that we're pretty much used to doing every day. The playhead. Speaking of editing a piano roll, one of the more frustrating things on many hardware sequencers is waiting for the playhead to reach that one spot on the clip that's not working for you so you can edit it, with no way to move that position around as you would in a DAW. Such is the case with the Fantom, where you can't scroll the playhead or start the loop at a certain point of your choosing. Editing in this fashion can become pretty tedious and frustrating quickly, and you start to wonder why you didn't just stick to the mouse and keyboard. Thankfully, this is not the case with the MPC, where you always have a Q-link available that allows you to scroll that playhead at will, and in the case of the X, you have these wonderful buttons right here that allow you to quickly sprint around the clip and edit more fluidly. Mistakes. You might be the best musician in the world, but as soon as you press record, all that talent goes away. You normally have to make multiple takes of an idea until you get it just right. That being so, the process of re-recording and doing multiple takes should be as fast and as simple as possible. Here's what that looks like on the Fantom and on the MPC. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate if you could click that like button because it helps tell the algorithm that I'm not just wasting your time and helps it recommend it to more people. That way I can keep making more videos just like this one. Thanks a lot. Sampling. Just as the Fantom excels in the sound engine department, it will come as no surprise to anyone that the sampling on the MPC is leaps and bounds far ahead of the Fantom. But since the Fantom does name that it has sampling as a feature, I thought we'd explore it nonetheless. There are a couple of ways that the Fantom uses sampling. The first is to simply record and assign a sample to a pad. Not much can be done to that sample except for very basic stuff like editing the start and end point and maybe normalizing, truncating it. And I get it, the Fantom isn't supposed to be a sampler. You have the SP404 for that. But there is one baffling omission in this mode. Let's see if you can spot it when I'm auditioning the sample to see where I put the endpoint. See? No playhead. There's also no slicing, lazy chopping, and there's a lot of this going on. The second sampling option on the Fantom is much more interesting to me, and that is the sample to keyboard mode. Here you can sample an external sound source and make that one sample into an entire instrument. Or you can even use that sample as a waveform or oscillator on one of your synthesizers. We're just going to hold down C4 and the Fantom will spread it out over the keyboard, pitch shifting each one into the corresponding pitch. Of course, it's not a perfect copy, mind you, but you can have a lot of fun with this mode, especially with reverse mode, and of course you can always add master effects on it and tweak the filter and so on, as well as giving it amplitude envelopes, LFOs, and whatever you want. And now, the MPC. The MPC is one of the greatest samplers there is, period. This is how good the sampling is on the MPC. After sampling, you can do the usual set start and end points, fade in, fade out, reverts, etc. You can also lazy chop a sample into smaller pieces to create a new program. These samples can be pitch shifted, you can add effects to them, layer them on top of each other. Sky's the limit here. The way you slice the samples is intuitive and fast, and you can handle this either via touchscreen or with the cue links. There is a reason that the MPC is one of the foundations of sample-based music. What might not be so obvious is that the MPC is also a powerhouse at cloning external synthesizers. With the auto sampler, we can actually program the MPC to sample a range of notes and assign them automatically to each corresponding key. After generating this core multi-sample instrument, we can also further sculpt it with all the usual suspects such as filters, LFOs, and up to 4 effects. This is perhaps one of the most powerful and yet underrated features of the modern day MPC. There is an aspect that the Fantom absolutely rules over the MPC, and that is how quickly switching out between projects and sound banks is. Basically, there's no loading time at all. You just tap a project, call a scene in the Fantom, and you're there. It's all loaded, the clips, the sounds, everything. No loading times in between. On the MPC, switching out from one project to another does take quite a bit of loading time, mostly depending on how many samples you're using, and in some cases, you can even hear a bit of lag when loading from one plugin preset to another. That means that in a live situation, the Fantom will be a much better choice if you're aiming to play between different styles, different songs, and have lots of playlists loaded up. The MPC is definitely a great live player, but you will have to think it out a bit more, or have a few pauses and make a few jokes between sets. Sound. As far as sound engines go, the Fantom has an arguably wider range of synthesizers and organic instruments available at the moment versus the MPC. I say at the moment because Akai have been steadily adding instruments to its plugin library over the last few years and seem to have no intention of slowing down, while Roland's updates since the release of the Fantom have been few and pretty far between, with the last one being the Enzyme synthesizer about a year ago. The Fantom does have an added advantage of hosting dedicated circuitry components for its V pianos as well as for its organs, and that definitely shows when played in isolation. I'll play them both side by side, and I'll ask you to pay attention to the subtleties in the Fantom's piano, especially when playing softly and loudly versus the MPC. However, where the MPC may lack in dynamics, it more than makes up for in great presets which are inspiring and easy to fit nicely into a mix. The strings plugin might be the weakest link on the MPC, at least to my ears, though I have been able to obtain some nice patches with a little tweaking. Compared to the Fantom strings though, I just find them a bit more artificial than the Fantom's more organic tones. As far as proper synthesizer engines go, aside from the Jura, which is a Roland Juno clone, the engines on both machines differ quite a bit, with the Fantom offering a huge selection of the classic Roland sound that we all know and love, namely a Jupiter 8, Juno, JPX clones, as well as their excellent Zencore engine. Fantom boasts an analog filter, along with other digital emulations, which really helps sculpting out your sounds. The MPC is no slouch though, and it also offers its own assortment of great synthesizers, such as the Fabric XL synthesizer, which uses a particular mix of synthesis and sampling, OP4X FM synthesizer, which frankly took me by surprise, and the Mini D, which emulates the classic Moog synth. I'm not going to do a side-by-side demo of all the sounds because this video is probably going to be long enough as it is, but suffice it to say, inspiring sounds abound on both of these machines, and you have more than enough raw materials to make a full and beautiful song on either one. As far as multitimbrality and MIDI tracks go, the Fantom only has 16 internal MIDI tracks or instruments for you to sequence. Plus, you can sequence 16 external MIDI tracks as well. You can also layer these 16 tracks or instruments on top of each other to create massive patches that you can easily pan and level with the front panel controls that make this process really quick and easy. The MPC, on the other hand, allows for up to 128 MIDI tracks for you to sequence. However, it is important to point out that only 8 instances of the internal plugin instruments can be loaded in standalone mode, with the option to connect to a computer if you want more, though you can also load as many drum kits or key groups as your RAM and CPU will allow within that 128 track maximum. Just as with the Fantom, you can play multiple tracks at the same time, but unlike the Fantom, I can't seem to record them at the same time. To be honest, I'm not really sure if it's something you can't do or if I just haven't figured out how it's done, but my workaround has been to just copy and paste the MIDI data from one track into another to reach the same result if I need it. If anyone watching knows if recording multiple MIDI tracks at the same time can be done on the MPC, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm always happy to learn something new. Another major difference between these two machines is that the MPC allows for 8 dedicated audio tracks for you to record external synths, guitars, vocals, what have you. These tracks can be edited, warped, added effects to, whatever you want. The Fantom doesn't allow for dedicated audio tracks, but you can process external audio through its effects, and you can assign samples into the pads if you need like a backing track or something, all of which adds to its usefulness as a live performance hub. Finally, another major difference is the way that effects are handled between these two. The effects on the Fantom are actually very varied and fun, and many effects that are found on the beloved SP404 make an appearance here as well. It would be amazing if you could add more effects per track though. On the MPC, on the other hand, you can freely assign up to 4 per track or even per pad in case of sample and drum kits, and you can save your custom effects rack for future uses as well. The available effects do vary in quality and usability, with the worst ones being some of the older reverb and delays, but the newest additions are downright impressive, with the Flavor Pro being amongst my favorites. Another important thing that I can get into is that pre-machines can act as an external hardware surface between the MPC can control Ableton and just thought it was worth mentioning in case I was important. I can get back to this though. So, final thoughts. Who is each device ideal for? In my opinion, the Fantom is a live performer's dream, and by a live performer, I mean an actual keyboard player. Perhaps on a stage or in a band, someone who wants the very best in pianos, organs, just wants to rip on the keyboard and be able to switch around different sounds in a heartbeat. The Fantom is the one for you. However, if your main goal is music production outside of a computer environment, the Fantom would not be my first choice. The MPC still has a lot of growing up to do in some of its standalone instruments, but in my opinion, it is the superior machine when it comes to music production, sampling, external sequencing, and ultimately, fast and fun workflow. Now, I hope you forgive me because in an ideal world, you would have both, as they are extremely complementary to one another, and together, I feel that they manage to make up for each other's shortcomings as well. I found an amazing workflow in this absolutely ridiculous combo. I only wish I was a greater musician so they could be better served and truly used to their amazing potential. Let me know in the comments what you think. I always look forward to our conversations. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful or at least entertaining. Have a great week. See you next time.